Welcome back, everyone, to the fourth and final installment of Malayan Tiger at a Tipping Point. Today I'll introduce the Jahai people and their collaborative Menraq anti-poaching campaign with the Malaysian NGO Rimau to protect the remaining Malayan tigers in Royal Belum State Park. But first I'm going to do a little introduction of myself, and if you like what you're seeing, please hit the subscribe button. So once again, my name is James Whitlow Delano. I've worked with many of the best publications in the world. I've published several award-winning photo books, exhibited my photographs on 6 continents, and I love to pass my knowledge on to others. In 2016, I founded Everyday Climate Change on Instagram. This story, The Malayan Tiger is at a Tipping Point, was pitched to by me and published in Inside Climate News. If the Temiar people are the least lucky because none of their ancestral land is protected, and the Batek are more fortunate because half of their former territory is protected in the Taman Negara National Park, the Jahai people, another former nomadic Australo-Papuan people like the Batek, are the luckiest of all because their land is within the Royal Belum State Park. They haven't lost their ancestral territory. It makes them more isolated than the other groups at this point. Royal Belum was only finalized in 2007. It was originally established in 2000. It is a 117,000 hectare, 290,000 acre swathe of forest on Lake Temenggong in the upper reaches of the Menraq River. Perversely, in Malaysia, sometimes a hydroelectric dam, although it drowns communities, it drowns forests, I'm not advocating for it, but perversely sometimes it protects the forest upstream because they don't want to log and have the debris go down and destroy multi-million-dollar turbines. So perversely, sometimes, as in the case of Royal Belum State Park, a dam can actually protect forests upstream. 60 to 70% of the tigers were lost in a sweep by poachers in 2015 and 2016 in Royal Belum State Park. That left just an estimated 11 tigers in the park. That's when Harun Rahman, director of Rimau, a Malaysian NGO, decided to approach the director of Menraq State Parks with an idea. He floated an idea of a collaboration with the indigenous Jahai people because they have skin in the game. This is their ancestral territory, to create anti-poaching patrols within the park to help save the Malayan tiger. At first, the Jahai were actually skeptical. They have a checkered past with the outside world. They've been abused, forced into slavery in the past by more powerful indigenous groups. So they were a little bit hesitant to enter into any collaboration. But finally they agreed, and the anti-poaching patrol was called Menraq, which means people in the Jahai language. Looking to the future, the elders of the Jahai community would not agree to the Menraq Project until Rimau agreed to bring in teachers and healthcare professionals to help improve the connectivity, the literacy, where in a community where 10% of adults are literate, so that the next generation could survive as a unique ethnic group. Also, the Jahai are now living in settlements, and they still have a deep connection. They'll go into the forest for weeks at a time, but still they're losing some of their forest skills. Part of what Menraq is doing is helping to polish up their bushcraft. Sheikh Reisman, a bushcraft expert, helps them to polish what he calls their jungle skills, because since they're more settled now, they're losing some of their knowledge of the forest. So now sometimes poachers actually have equal or even better forest skills than the Jahai. And that's why Sheikh Reisman holds during the Menraq Muda workshops for bushcraft, as he calls it. Here's the thing. The Jahai traditionally navigate by watershed, by rivers. They have no use for or knowledge of north, south, east, and west, the points of the compass. But Menraq uses satellite phone and it uses GPS. So what to do? Because they're based on the points of the compass. So I watched him set a compass down, surrounded by a circle of Jahai men watching intently, and he said, point the red arrow at the end, and then read the coordinate, the number on the compass. And that's what they use to communicate location if someone were to get lost. Yes, sometimes people get lost because if they leave the territory and enter a watershed they're unfamiliar with, they can get lost, or someone gets injured. Then if they have the coordinates, they can use GPS and the satellite phone to communicate with each other, and then start the search party to rescue the member possibly injured by a poacher. The Menraq typically go into the forest for about 7 days, and they set up trail cams, one facing the other, so they can photograph wildlife that goes between them. They've photographed tigers, gaur, the largest cattle in the world, for example, and they've had some darkly comedic episodes with elephants. In one case, one camera photographed or provided footage of an elephant destroying another camera. The elephants seem to have a particular dislike for these cameras. It was suggested to me that maybe they can see a little bit the infrared of the camera, and it tips them off that they're being filmed. But on the serious side, the poachers, again, who are often from Cambodia and Vietnam, entering Malaysia on a tourist visa. Some come over the border from Thailand, but less than you might think. Harun Rahman tells me of Rimau. They disappear into the forest, and he mentions that, like, if you see a boat come in loaded with supplies and 2 people and leave empty, it can be a tip-off that a poacher has been dropped off. They don't use firearms because the noise can be heard too far. They do bring a watchdog, which they often kill when they're finished, when it's no longer of use to them, and they kill the tigers with spears. They use these kind of wire snares to capture the animals, and one of the duties of the Jahai Menraq patrols is to take away, to remove the snares when they find them. As I mentioned, though, their forest skills of the poachers are often as good or better than the Jahai. And part of the advantage of the trail cams is they often capture footage of the poachers in the forest, and they can use the footage to learn more about their tactics and the equipment that they use. So Menraq and Rimau are particularly vigilant right now because we're kind of still coming off the pandemic, and that could be part of the explanation. Poaching numbers have been down since the Menraq patrols began. So they say because of the increased ease in travel, the next couple of years are going to be crucial for measuring the true effect of the anti-poaching patrols. But so far, the project is definitely bearing fruit. Poaching numbers are down. They haven't lost a single tiger in Royal Belum State Park since Menraq began. So photographically, how do you approach this part of the project? This was a positive, happier part of the story that helped a lot. But I did have to remember that children were involved in this with the teachers. So I had the express permission of Rimau, the teachers, and most importantly, the Jahai community. When you're photographing children, you have to have the parents and the community's permission. Photographing the work of the Jahai, I wanted to get a sense in the photographs of the connection of the Jahai within each other, the camaraderie. I mean, these are, old friends, often family, but also the connection between Rimau and the Jahai. Remembering that the members of Rimau are part of the Malay majority, Malaysian non-Orang Asli, non-indigenous majority, a group that has often oppressed the Jahai. So there is that trust gap to overcome. It was interesting to see how the Jahai are relating to the outside world, because, like it or not, the world has changed and it's bubbling in toward them. And what do they adopt and what do they not adopt? Harun Rahman said to me that the goal is one day for him to leave, Rimau to leave, and the Jahai to run the show and maybe run the state park. I'd like to thank some people without whom this project would have been impossible. The flight was funded by the Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting, and they have funded projects of mine in the past in Malaysia that appeared in the Washington Post and National Geographic. I am grateful to them for their ongoing support of my work. I'd like to thank Kuasa and Rimau for providing access, again, that would have been impossible otherwise. I'd like to also thank the Batek, the Temiyar, and the Jahai peoples for opening up their communities to me and sharing their stories. Finally, last but not least, I'd like to thank Inside Climate News and editor Michael Kotis for his thoughtful editing of my prose. Believe me, it can be rough at times, but he respected the basic content of the story and polished it up, presented it very nicely, and I'm grateful to them for their support of this project. So most of all, I want to thank all of you for coming along on this journey. I will be breaking down in the future other photographic projects. The next project I plan to break down for you is Duterte's drug war and the teen widows I encountered. There's a lot to discuss about that, a lot of cultural issues and ethical issues to navigate. So thank you very much for joining me. Again, if you like what you see, please hit the subscribe button. We have a lot to talk about. I'd like to have you as a part of the conversation, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much.